Welcome, everyone. You're listening to How We Heal the podcast. I'm Kira Noel, medical intuitive, your host. Our sponsor is the medicinebuddhawithin.com, intuitive training for all. Check out their website and be registered to be invited to all the upcoming trainings. Now let's begin our show. Welcome to the podcast today. My astronomical guest is Betsey Lewis. You'll know why I say that after she shares a little bit. She's the author of over 30 books, a radio personality, a special advanced being who came to this earth to help us understand paranormal experiences and investigate UFOs and alien stories, and has been in this field for a very, very long time. Have her tell you the beginning of that story. And there's a lot in her life that we would not have had the opportunity to have without her. That is all I want to say for now, and let Betsey tell you about herself.
Wow, what an introduction, Kurt. Thank you so much. I'll start at the beginning. When I was about 7-8 months old, my parents were attending the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, and they decided that it was time to go see my grandparents and family members in Twin Falls, which is about 8 hours away. And they got on this road. It wasn't a big freeway or anything. There was nothing like that, a 2-lane road, and they were in an area called New Meadows. They hadn't seen a car for miles, and suddenly, all of a sudden, they hear this roar that came out of nowhere. It was shaking the car so hard, they thought a plane was going to crash on them. And the next thing they knew, Dad was pulling over. They jumped out of the car. I was in the back seat in a bassinet. They looked up in the sky. There was nothing. The sound stopped as soon as they stopped. There was nothing, not a plane, nothing. Well, that was the story they always told me. And my mom always said that she felt that there was something going on, but she couldn't remember anything. And that was, back in the 50s when UFOs, flying saucers, were big back then. But then in the 1980s, my uncle said, "Do you remember that story about your parents when you were visiting?" And I said, "Know what they told me?" And he said, "I was watching this story about Betty and Barney Hill and how they were abducted on a little isolated road. They had 2 hours that they lost, or maybe more than that they couldn't account for, except through regression." And he says, "I remember so well that your dad arrived late. They had lost 2 hours somewhere and couldn't account for it." And I went, "What? How is that possible?" So during the 1980s, I contacted Ann Druffel, who was a MUFON investigator and a hypnotist. She regressed both my mom and I. And we both told that something happened. I said we were abducted by aliens. We retain everything, right? Through regression, that comes out. I said that we were abducted. And I saw my mother in some kind of tube-like structure calling out to me. The floor was translucent, and I could see my father sitting in a chair down below, and he was staring off like into space. And I was on a table being examined by these gray beings with big heads, big eyes, the normal grays. And that's how my life started. So I don't know if we were abducted, but I know something happened.
When was the regression? How old were you when that happened?
I was, I would have been in my 1981. Yeah.
Powerful moment for you and your mom to experience together after all those years. I just read you're a third-generation psychic. So there was a grandparent and a mother or father.
Well, my mother was very psychic. We'd have conversations about aliens. We talked about ESP and telepathy. We'd do little games. We'd hold some cards and ask me what color it was, if it was a black card, a red card. We had really strong telepathy with each other. And she could astral project. She could be in 2 places at once. And people claimed that they could see her, in one place, and she hadn't gone anyplace. She was still home. So I don't know how she did it, but she was pretty amazing. And I know I got a lot of that from her. That she psychic and intuitive.
It sounds like she gave you permission to be who you are and encouraged it.
She did.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing for a
Yeah.
child. I can speak for myself. That's
I was
unusual.
abnormal.
Very unusual.
You're so Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
my mother's reaction to my, psychic young abilities was to throw cold water on my face and tell me to stop it.
What? No.
"Wake up, you can't say that. You don't know what you're seeing. How could you say
So
that?"
she
Looking back now, she was probably very afraid of
Yeah.
what that reality might mean to her if she were to
Sure.
accept it.
Sure.
So, when I asked you to speak on this podcast, which is called How We Heal, and focus a little bit on what have you found in your world and your life that has helped you be more present and be who you are and heal? I mean, healing and being totally present and being able to just let go of what others are thinking of us and just be is a pretty powerful thing. And when I reached out to you, it's because you really represent someone who is very who she is. There's no doubt who you are.
Yeah.
And that's very impressive. And you had mentioned a couple of experiences. And, here you are, someone who's written extensively. And I'm just going to take a moment and read a couple of titles. Star Walker, right? A novel.
It's true story.
And then this is just available on Amazon currently, The Jumpers and Stargates. So how have you healed? How did you come to be so Betsy?
Well, I was very psychic as a child. I had invisible playmates that my mother said talked to me all the time. So I think those were my spirit guides. She said that I described them. I would say they had little messages for me, and I couldn't tell her what they were. But my first real spirit experience was after my grandfather passed away in 1957. I was only 7 years old, and I was devastated. I loved him so much. He passed at 65 from a massive heart attack. A few days later, I was sleeping. I had my own bedroom, and there were street lights out there. I could see kind of in the bedroom, and I woke up in the middle of the night. Something woke me up, and I turned over, and there was this gauzy image of a man. I It's almost like I could see through him, and it kind of looked like my father. And I was so scared I couldn't scream. Nothing came out. I pulled the covers over my head and didn't look up until morning. And I told my mother about it, and she said that was probably your grandfather. People come back about the age that they look the best, usually in their 30s. And she said, your father looks a lot like your grandfather, when he was younger. So she thought that was him. It was my grandfather. I just know it was.
So you've had these guides, very powerful people in your life that are around, but have you always been able to just accept that you have that skill?
I blocked it for a while as a child because I was afraid of it. And finally, I decided, when I got a little older, I decided to let it just flow. I knew that in 1967, my mother and I were going to move to LA. And we did. We left, had some dysfunctional parents. There were a lot of fights. So I think I kind of went inward. I think a lot of really intuitive people have had bad childhoods or really difficult childhoods that makes you more sensitive to people. And that's what happened to me.
You've been a speaker for conventions where there's discussion about other forms of life.
No, the first one I went to was in Alamo, Nevada, and there was probably about 35 people there, 40 people.
So when you had awareness of the alien life forms and UFOs and extraterrestrial beings, did you get any pushback around you? People saying you can't tell us about that? That's not okay?
Family members. I have some family that live in the deep south, and cousin. I sent her a book that I wrote about healing Earth and everything's alive and everything has a consciousness, and to pray for everything in the world. And she thought that was like sacrilege, that you can't do that. You have to pray just to God and Jesus, And I thought, how silly, everything is alive. Everything has God in it, the God consciousness, and I knew I couldn't argue with her. I sent a couple emails to her, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to go there. I've had
Yeah.
people like that. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have confrontations or friends or even a partner that said, that was interesting when you talked about UFOs at the party? And you saw that angelic force in my life, but that's enough. I'm done. It's okay if you stop.
Well, I'll tell you something new that happened recently. It was last year, Trump was up for election, and next door neighbor, husband and wife team, they're in their early 80s. And I just happened to ask the wife, I said, "Who are you voting for?" And she said, "Kamala Harris." And I said, "Okay." And she looked at me kind of funny. I said, "Well, I had a vision that Donald Trump is going to win again. I had one in 2016 of a vision, and I know he's going to win." "Oh, no, you're wrong. No way." So I said, "Well, you just wait and see, you know? And of course, I had to actually call her and ask her, after he won, I'm sure, she didn't want to eat crow, but I said, I was right. I knew when I get this feeling, I know I'm right.
I, like you, know this is just one view, and we think we have some idea, and there's much more out there.
Much more. It was in the 90s that I worked for the studios, Disney, Warner Brothers, CBS, and I was tired of the game playing, the politics that was going on with all these different companies. I just was tired of this city. I'd lived in LA for 25 years, and it was in 1989 I decided to move to Ketchum, Idaho, Sun Valley, Idaho, the ski resort. My mother was living there. And I wanted to get back to my roots. I missed Idaho. I mean, it's the most beautiful place. And up in the mountains, I mean, there's just, the mountains have a negative energy, which is really a positive energy. It has negative ions, and the running water has negative ions.
So tell the listeners what do negative ions do?
Okay. Well, it has different ions that are charged. And so those ions are good ions. And for an example, positive ions are the Santa Ana winds, the dry hot winds in Los Angeles. People become very irritable. It's like a full moon. People get angry. There's more car accidents. So positive charged are not good. They really make you irritable. And the negative ions are really the calming ones. Anything that's moving water is very healing. And so are mountains. There's ions there are really strong. That's why most Native Americans, when they have a vision quest, they go to a mountain, a big mountain, because it is calming and it does have those ions.
And the ions are present in the rock, in the atmosphere, and it's around us all the time. So when you so was there ever any time in your life that you had to seek out healing to help yourself to continue your development and expansion?
Well, when I moved up there, I got a hold of Ed McGaw, Eagle Man. He was an Oglala Sioux ceremonial leader, and he wrote a book called Mother Earth Spirituality. I love that book. It tells everything about native ways and about healing, about the four directions, about the sacred pipe, doing the sweat lodges. So I got into that. I started going to powwows, but we invited him to Ketchum. A bunch of us invited him there. And we talked him into doing a sweat lodge vision quest. I think that was probably one of the most healing things I've ever done with a group of people. 35 people showed up. More wanted to come, but we knew the sweat lodge that we were building wasn't going to hold enough. They were charging like thousands of dollars in Sedona for those kind of things, which was crazy. I think Ed only wanted like $20, just to get him there and everything, which was fine. People loved that. And we had a Hopi shaman come there. Just people from all over showed up. And he showed us how to build a sweat lodge. And out of saplings. And then we had to get the lava rocks. You get those heated up in there, and it gets really hot. He pours water over there and says all the prayers and brings in the spirits, and you can feel them. You start seeing little sparks of things, and it's like the spirits are there. And then he asked each person in there, "What are you closest to in nature?" And he gave us a special Sioux name.
What was yours? Do you remember?
Well, I told him I liked rainbows, so I don't remember how to say it, but no, I don't remember the Sioux word for it, rainbows. But
Rainbow. Okay.
Rainbow Woman. Yeah. Uh-huh. But I don't know it in Sioux. It was an incredible ceremony. I went to a powwow in Kamiah, Idaho. It's Pierce Indians up there. And I'll tell you, what wonderful, wonderful people. They made you feel welcome. I mean, now, people don't trust anybody. We're so divided. But up there, you feel like you're a part of them. And, when they dance, they invite people in that are non-Native Americans. They call it intertribal. So you can go in and dance. And I was in the dancing, which I loved, but I just felt this affinity. I sought out a lot of different religions through my life. I looked into Buddhism. I like that, but I just felt an affinity with Native Americans. And I think that was very healing for me to understand that everything around us has a vibration. Everything is alive, and to honor that.
Well, and I've had a couple of years myself
Oh, that's great.
in Woodstock doing sweats. I got to do the pipe ceremony, and I would do the herbs, and it was really a unique experience because I've had a lot of traditional healing experiences, retreats of all kind, including a vision quest and
awesome.
all kinds of wonderful exposure to things. But this was kind of like little tornado of steam and heat, just helping me release physical things that are trapped. Yeah, and I have great admiration for the Sweat Lodge. I think it's such a powerful tool.
Right.
And I was very privileged to have this opportunity. And I was only one of two women in the Sweat Lodge. The partner of the leader was the other. So I got to be more a participant. So the profound healing or the healing part of it for you, can you describe it for the listeners to understand a little bit better?
It's kind of hard to explain. When I'm around Native American people and I'm part of that, it's just feeling of belonging, and it's very healing to me. Ed told us about rocks. He had a special rock, and he called it, in Sioux, it's called a wote stone. And he told us to go out and get your special stone and rub it all the time. He said, because it has that energy. I know a lot of people collect crystals, and that's great too. Crystals have a lot of energy. I think just being outdoors. I grew up in the outdoors. My parents bought a lake when I was 12 years old. It needed a lot of work. It was the person that owned it before let it go. And it was a mile long. There was upper Crater Lakes in the Snake River Canyon. And we had rowboats, there was fishing, swim meets down archery range, horses. We had cats, dogs. There was a few ducks that ended up in our bathtub. We saved an owl one time. It was just a great experience being there. And my father sold it to the city in '68. We never had a drowning in that lake, never. And there was close calls. My mom, sister, and I would run the concession stand. But after the city bought it, they had a lifeguard there, and they had a lot of drownings. And I'll tell you, the water didn't look like it did. And I don't know if you remember Dr. Emoto with his experiments with water crystals.
Oh, yes, the crystal. Yes.
And he said that if you pray over water, they noticed that the crystals in the water were pure and beautiful. But with negative emotions, the crystals weren't beautiful. So water has a consciousness. And I learned that from my other native mentor, which was Corbin Hardy. He was Shoshone ceremonial leader. And he said that water would speak to him, and water actually told him, I'll look like water someday, but I won't be water anymore. And he's talking about all the pollution that was going to happen to water. What he was doing, he lived in southern Nevada. He was trying to stop the nuclear tests down there with a bunch of people.
I've heard the name.
Corbin Hardy, amazing man. He passed, I think it was in 2007, and Ed McGaw passed in 2017, and I really miss them. I don't think there are a few people out there. Maybe I just haven't met them. I feel kind of lost without them.
Well, maybe there's another way to communicate with them. When I hear your story, and this is really the first time we're having this conversation, I hear that you had a lot of really amazing support. You had, this lovely environment for a while, that lake, a mile long lake, and that is so healing. Absolutely, to
Yes,
have that kind of experience with water and
yes.
the land.
I lived in the water. I think I had scales. I lived in the water. I
There's
think so.
very like water one, yes, with
Yeah,
the man with
right.
gills. There's a
Yeah.
woman with gills, the rainbow woman. um, in Idaho. So
No.
you've had these amazing experiences. How did you land on um, the world that we can't see, the more evolved beings that come to visit? I'm not saying I've seen them, but I certainly believe they exist.
Well, I've had some other experiences which I think were ET related. I didn't see a UFO, but I've had some really strange things that happened and some missing time. So that might be all related. But I've always known that we're not alone in this cosmos. That how could we be? I mean, why would we be so unique? And I think some of these beings that are visiting us now, and I think that's going to come out very soon. Disclosure, everybody, it's coming.
What is
Um,
it? Is it? Tell me.
Yeah, get ready. I think there are many types. There's insect beings, there's reptilian lizzies or lizard type beings, there's the grays, the hybrids, they're the Nordic whites. I wrote about the blue men that have saved lives. They're from a distant galaxy or something, but they've come here to help people. And in Vietnam, people were saved by these blue beings that are ethereal. They're not really solid beings, but Native Americans have had amazing experiences, and I wrote about those. I believe Native Americans when they talk about ETs because they usually don't open up about things like that. They're pretty shy about things like that.
So there was the opportunity for you to hear the stories, have experiences with extraterrestrial, and write books about it. You have an author in your family, on your family tree, that
Yes,
kind of
yes.
brought a little inspiration. So tell us about him.
Well, but in 1907, my mother wanted to meet someone new, and she went to a dating service in Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard and put her name in there. And one day she got a call from a guy named Mo or Maurice, and he took her out. I think he took her to a restaurant somewhere on the beach, and he took her home, and he threw a book at her. And he said, read this. My brother wrote it. It was The Exorcist. Bill's older brother. She married him eventually, and they had quite a relationship. I got to know Bill Blatty and some of the things
He
he
wrote
had
The
some.
Exorcist.
Yes,
He became part of your extended family.
right, he did. And he had some very strange experiences too, with phones flying off the hook and spirit connections. And
That's so interesting. So let's tell the audience how we connected originally. Now that you're talking about old things flying around, and how did you connect with me originally?
saw the TV series that
That
you
I
were
was
in.
in.
I was so impressed with you immediately, and I said, I've got to get a hold of her and have her on my
You
show.
you contacted me, and then we did a show that you were the host of, and
Right.
we had a really strange electrical disconnection during the
That's
show.
right. I forgot
Where
that.
yes,
Oh,
and there was an energy between us. I always come to something just completely unrehearsed, I'm ready,
mm,
and we just start having a conversation, and I'm sharing about my work, and it which is, again, a little bit of a different view of the body than is
mhm.
typically expected. That energy field came and kind of turned us off for a while. It just shut it off. And that was it. And then you filled the space as you would as a seasoned host. You filled it with some, edited material you already had, and we got back together and finished the show. And I was very impressed with your great ability to just keep going. Keep going.
I try.
It
I
was lovely.
try. Yeah, I'd like to do another show. It's like everything just kind of quit out there. I was with talk radio, and they've been around for years. That was the platform I was on. And now they're gone. So I don't know what I'm going to do next. Maybe I'll do something like you.
Like me? Okay.
Yeah.
So when you talk about your own personal healing journey,
Mhm.
How would you describe it?
Well, I like to help people, and I do that through my readings, and I'm sure you do that too with your readings. I got to know Arnold Schwarzenegger when I lived up in Ketchum, and he's quite a character. He's very funny, great guy, down to earth. And Maria Shriver, she's something else. He did a speech on YouTube, and I hope everybody listens to this speech. He grew up in a poor home, and his parents wanted him to stay in Austria, wanted him to be a worker or maybe a policeman like him. And he had a vision. And, I know when people have visions and they stick to it, you can accomplish anything. And he talks about that too. He said everybody would say, you can't do that. The naysayers were everywhere. You've got to change your name. Nobody will listen or want to watch somebody with the last name Schwarzenegger. He had a heavy accent. You can't be an actor, they told him. And he proved them all wrong because he said he worked hard, he had a vision, and he didn't give up. He was tenacious. I want women to be empowered again. Women are the goddess. We've forgotten that we're goddesses, right? And I think women have to be bold again. What happened to the women of the 70s? Women's rights, and I don't know. Something changed, right?
Something got put to sleep for a while.
Mhm.
I would agree with that. So when you look at the history of your own life and your own healing, my interpretation of what you said, you have a vision and you should follow it. That regardless of the naysayers and the doubters and
Exactly.
those who will even pay you to talk to them and then
Mhm.
ignore what you say,
Right, right.
you need to keep saying it.
Yeah.
And I, personally identify very much with that trajectory as someone who, my own daughter was like, you can't be a medical intuitive. It's too weird. She's in a different place now. It's about just keeping that light on inside of us, each of us, and
Mhm.
really respecting who we are. Just saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is just it. I don't want to push and shove anyone. No one has to
Mhm.
buy my brand. I really believe I'm meant to do what I'm doing. I'm
Mhm.
going to follow that, you know, I feel very connected to everything when I stay on my path."
Yeah.
So what is your
That's
path?
beautiful.
Thank you. I've had a few years to think about these things.
I was gonna say, when I was younger, my father wasn't very supportive of me at all, really negative. All I heard was negative things from him, and it was really tough. I was really insecure, and I didn't feel empowered. It took a while to get over that and say, he was wrong. My mother was there and very positive. Total opposite, thank God for that. But he wasn't, and it was tough growing up that way.
That is a tough situation. So when we started this discussion, we were talking about people who have capabilities, psychic ability, intuition that's engaged and they're in their own intuitive path. That often they're in families that have dysfunction. And
Yeah,
often those
that's
families
right.
are sometimes broken and that in a sense that kind of holds us in back inside. For
Mhm.
my own early experiences are I don't want to relate to these people in my home,
Right.
I'm afraid, and I think I'll just stay with the energy field. I felt very connected to something greater than that physical realm, and I found in my own work and in my life experience that, yes, there's so much more, so much more.
And, some people have to stay in relationships. They think they do. Women do. Abusive relationships. And I know what that's like. And my mother did that. I mean, it didn't stop. She would hear that he's going to change and he's going to do this and that, and never did. That's why we left and went to LA. And I'm thankful I did. I got out of the small town. It was really a culture shock to go from Potatoeville here in Idaho to LA, it was totally different.
That's a big
And it was a
shift.
big learning, a big learning curve for me. Yeah, I had to grow up fast, and I did. I started working when I was 17 at a bank in LA. Both my mom and I got jobs. We went to LA with a suitcase and $100. Didn't know where we were going to work, didn't know where we were going to live, and incredible people helped us. I mean, it was just amazing how people can be so wonderful. And they can be so mean too. But we found the good ones, thank goodness.
I believe we always find where we are inside of us
Hmm.
with ourselves when we're
Yeah.
feeling like it's time to grow, it's powerful. I'm gonna give myself this power, I'm gonna give myself permission.
Hmm.
People meet us where we are.
Right.
I really appreciate your sharing today, and wanted to ask you one last thing. What's on the horizon for you as you know, just this part of life which I call the elder category. So, but it's wisdom has come. I don't need your permission anymore. I am okay with me,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I'm not in a hurry to teach you what I do or who I am. I just know when I do me, when I am me in this world, the world gets a little brighter because I'm not hiding, and I help others say, "Hey, I can come into the world too."
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Well, I love writing books, and I've got another book coming out. It's called Time Jumpers and Stargates. I think you mentioned that. And it's about people disappearing into portals and aliens going there. That's why these UFOs just suddenly zip away. Have you ever watched Skinwalker Ranch?
No, I haven't.
It's on tonight. It's on the History Channel. Watch it. Really weird stuff there. Yeah. I know they're there. Portals and missing people, and also about mind control. I think a lot of that's been going on with our government and people that have been abducted by our government. And
You get no argument from me there.
oh, yes, the government. Oh, yeah, we could talk about that for quite a while.
Well, the government is the entity we have that, but really, what are we talking about? People. Like when you go to a sweat lodge, there's like-minded people. When you go to government, there are like-minded people.
Right.
And it creates an energy field. And there is a kind of vortex is a good word, meaning things kind of disappear that shouldn't be disappearing.
Right, right. Well, we'd like to send a lot of people to a vortex. I know a few politicians, I think.
But the part that we're doing today, right now in this podcast, and you do in your books and you do in your work with individuals, is you're bringing some positive opportunities for growth and expansion of growth. See, we're not going to be visual here, but it's a seesaw of just kind of recalibrating, finding that balance again. That in myself, I have the balance daily, and you do, or we couldn't be us.
Exactly.
I so appreciate you
Well,
today.
thank you. You're wonderful. You're just such a light out there.
Well, thank you. I'm speaking to another light. Yes, we are.
Put your sunglasses on, everybody.
That's right. Rainbow Betsey Lewis, Rainbow Woman in Idaho. I'm holding the energy field for everyone there. And I thank you from
Me
Woodstock, New
too.
York,
Thank
and the
you.
entire East Coast of the United States. Thanks you.
Well, thank you. And I'm so excited you've done the Native American thing and know so much about it. That's really incredible. That's beautiful. We have a lot in common.
I think we've come from somewhat of a similar cloth.
Yes, kindred souls, aren't we?
Kindred souls we are. Yes, Betsy.
Well, thank
All
you
right. Thank
again.
you. All right.
You take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
We want to thank the following people. Jennifer Maidman for original music. Listen to her on iTunes and Spotify. True English of Upstate Podcast Studio for sound and recording engineering. And all our executive producers. See you next time.